Was a long day, I know how you feel. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let the world outside start to fade away. Welcome back to the mental lullaby. Tonight, we aren't just looking for rest. We're giving your mind the permission it needs to let go. Using gentle psychological techniques and calming soundscapes will guide your nervous systems from the noise of the day into the quiet of the night. You have done enough for today. Now, it's time to simply be. Let's begin our journey into sleep.
The Mind in the Abyss, a psychological analysis of dark souls. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Mental Lullaby. If you're new here, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It really helps us continue exploring the deeper meanings hidden within the games we love. Today, we're venturing into something special. We're going to explore not just a game, but a mirror held up to the human psyche itself. We're talking about Dark Souls, and specifically, we're going to examine it through the lens of psychology. What does this brutal, unforgiving game reveal about the human mind? How does it tap into our deepest fears and our greatest strengths? Why do so many players describe it not just as a game, but as a transformative experience? These aren't idle questions. Over the past decade, Dark Souls has become more than entertainment for many people. It has become therapy, meditation, and even a form of personal philosophy. Players have shared countless stories about how this game helped them cope with depression, anxiety, and loss, how it taught them about perseverance, resilience, and finding meaning in struggle, how, paradoxically, a game centered on death and failure became a source of hope and strength in their lives. This is what we're going to unpack together. We'll examine the psychological mechanisms at work in Dark Souls, the philosophical themes woven into its design, and the profound ways it affects those who play it. We'll look at actual research that has been conducted on this topic, explore player testimonials, and dive deep into the lore to understand how every aspect of this game creates a unique psychological experience. So settle in, get comfortable, and prepare to descend with me into Lordran, not just as players, but as explorers of the human condition itself. Because what we're about to discover is that Dark Souls isn't simply about surviving in a cruel fantasy world. It's about surviving in this world, with all its challenges, setbacks, and moments of despair. And more importantly, it's about the remarkable resilience of the human spirit when faced with seemingly impossible odds. Let's begin. Part 1. The psychology of failure and death. When you first boot up Dark Souls, the game wastes no time in establishing its fundamental truth. You will die, and you will die a lot. For many players, this is where their journey ends before it truly begins. The tutorial boss, the Asylum Demon, towers over you while you wield nothing but a broken sword hilt. The game seems to be saying, this is what you're up against, and you are woefully unprepared. But something fascinating happens to those who persist. Something that goes beyond simply learning attack patterns or memorizing enemy placements. What happens is a fundamental shift in how the player perceives failure itself. In our everyday lives, failure often carries tremendous weight. We're conditioned from an early age to avoid it, to see it as a mark against our worth, a sign that we're not good enough. Society treats failure as a negative outcome, something to be ashamed of, something that diminishes us. This fear of failure can become paralyzing, preventing us from taking risks, trying new things, or stepping outside our comfort zones. Dark Souls completely inverts this relationship with failure. In Lordran, death isn't the end. It's not even really a setback in the traditional sense. Instead, death becomes information. Every time you die, you learn something. Maybe you discover that a particular enemy has a grab attack you didn't know about. Maybe you realize you rushed into a situation without assessing the environment. Maybe you find out the hard way that the friendly-looking crystal knight becomes violently hostile if you attack it. This transforms death from a punishment into a teaching tool. The game's famous "you died" screen isn't mocking you. It's simply stating a fact, as neutral as saying, "the sky is blue," and then it gives you another chance, and another, and another, as many chances as you need to learn, to adapt, to overcome. From a psychological perspective, what's happening here is a form of desensitization. This is actually a recognized therapeutic technique called exposure therapy, commonly used to treat anxiety disorders and phobias. The principle is simple. Repeated exposure to a feared stimulus in a safe environment gradually reduces the fear response. By experiencing failure over and over in the controlled environment of a video game, players become less sensitive to the emotional pain that failure typically causes. Research published in Proceedings from the Conference on Human Factors in Computing Systems in 2025 analyzed Reddit discussions where players talked about Dark Souls in relation to depression. The study found that players repeatedly described how the game helped them cope with failure in their real lives. One player wrote that the game taught them that everything can be overcome through perseverance, that no matter how dark and bleak life seems, things get better if you're willing to put in the hard work. Another player described their experience this way. They used to fear failure intensely in their daily life, avoiding challenges and opportunities because of the anxiety that came with potential failure. But after spending dozens of hours in Dark Souls, dying hundreds of times to the same bosses, something shifted. They found they no longer feared failure in their real life. The game had given them hopefulness, a belief that they could get through difficult times. This isn't just anecdotal. Studies on video games and mental health have found that games can have real therapeutic value when dealing with depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, addiction, and other conditions. But what makes Dark Souls particularly effective in this regard? The answer lies in how the game structures its challenge. Dark Souls is difficult, yes, but it's never unfair. Every enemy has telegraphed attacks. Every trap can be spotted if you're observant. Every boss can be defeated with the right strategy and enough practice. The game follows what players call the tough but fair principle. This is crucial because it means that when you fail, you know it's because of something you did or didn't do. The responsibility lies with you, which paradoxically makes failure less threatening. Because if failure is your responsibility, then so is success. You have agency. You have control. This ties into what psychologists call self-efficacy, a concept developed by Albert Bandura. Self-efficacy refers to your belief in your ability to succeed in specific situations. It's built through mastery experiences, through overcoming challenges. And Dark Souls is essentially a machine for creating mastery experiences. When you finally beat that boss who killed you 20 times, the sense of accomplishment is profound precisely because you earned it through persistent effort. The game's death mechanic reinforces this learning process in another subtle way. The bloodstain system. When you die, you leave behind a pool of blood where you fell, containing all the souls you were carrying. If you can make it back to that spot without dying again, you recover those souls. But if you die before reaching it, those souls are lost forever. This creates a risk-reward dynamic that keeps you engaged even after failure. You're not just retrying the same section mindlessly. You have a specific goal: recover what you lost. And importantly, you can see other players' bloodstains scattered throughout the world, marking where they died. You can even activate these bloodstains to watch a ghostly replay of their final moments. What this does psychologically is profound. It reminds you that you're not alone in your struggle. Other people have died here too. Lots of them. Failure is universal. Everyone who plays this game experiences it. There's actually comfort in that shared suffering. It normalizes failure, makes it feel less personal, less like a unique deficiency on your part. One player on Reddit described watching another player's death replay and laughing. knowing that other players would probably laugh at theirs too. But there was no malice in it, just recognition of their shared humanity, their shared vulnerability. The schadenfreude becomes compassionate rather than cruel because everyone knows they're in the same boat. This communal aspect of failure does something else important. It removes shame from the equation. When failure is expected, when it's part of everyone's experience, it stops being something to hide or feel embarrassed about. You can't maintain the illusion that you should be perfect when the game constantly reminds you that perfection isn't the point. Progress is the point. Learning is the point. Persistence is the point. There's also the matter of pacing. Dark Souls doesn't throw endless waves of enemies at you. Combat is methodical, almost meditative. You can't button mash your way through encounters. You have to observe, plan, execute. This slower pace gives you time to process what's happening, to learn from each interaction. It respects your intelligence even as it challenges your skills. When you die in Dark Souls, you respawn at the last bonfire you rested at. You're undead, cursed to return from death over and over. But here's the thing. In the lore, losing this ability to resurrect, truly dying, is called going hollow. And going hollow is described as losing your purpose, your drive, your will to continue. As long as you keep trying, as long as you refuse to give up, you remain human in the most important sense. The game makes this explicit through its mechanics. You can reverse hollowing by using an item called humanity at a bonfire. Humanity is a resource you collect, and using it to become human again allows you to summon help, to kindle bonfires for more healing charges, to engage with the multiplayer systems. Mechanically, humanity is valuable, but thematically, it represents your continued investment in the struggle, your refusal to surrender to despair. This is the first and perhaps most important psychological lesson of Dark Souls. Failure is temporary, but giving up is permanent. Death is not defeat. Defeat only comes when you stop trying. Players who internalize this lesson often find it transfers to their real lives. They become more willing to attempt difficult tasks, knowing that initial failure is not just acceptable but expected. They develop what psychologists call a growth mindset, the belief that abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. This contrasts with a fixed mindset, which sees abilities as static traits that can't be changed. Dark Souls practically forces a growth mindset upon you. You can't believe that you're just not good enough to beat a certain boss, because the game proves otherwise. Other players have beaten this boss. The boss has clear patterns and weaknesses. You just haven't learned them yet. The word "yet" becomes incredibly important. Not "I can't do this," but "I can't do this yet." Research conducted at Uppsala University in Sweden examined how Soulsborne games build resilience. The study found that the challenging difficulty, trial and error philosophy, and narrative elements in these games are particularly impactful in fostering players' resilience and positive coping strategies. The games cater to basic psychological needs for both self-efficacy and self-determination. Self-determination theory, developed by psychologists Edward Deci and Richard Ryan, proposes that humans have three basic psychological needs: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Dark Souls satisfies all three: autonomy through player choice in how to approach challenges, competence through the mastery experiences we've discussed, and relatedness through the passive multiplayer systems that connect you to other players, which we'll explore more later. When these needs are met, people experience intrinsic motivation, the drive to do something because it's inherently interesting or enjoyable, not because of external rewards. This is why players will spend hours attempting the same boss fight, not because the game is dangling some amazing reward in front of them, but because the process of overcoming the challenge is itself rewarding. This intrinsic motivation is key to why Dark Souls can have therapeutic effects. External rewards, extrinsic motivation, tend to be short-lived. But when you're intrinsically motivated, When the challenge itself becomes meaningful, you develop a different relationship with struggle. It stops being something to endure and becomes something to engage with, even to appreciate. There's a beautiful irony in all this. Dark Souls is known for being punishingly difficult, for killing players repeatedly, for seemingly going out of its way to frustrate and challenge. And yet, for many people, it becomes a source of comfort, a place they return to when real life feels overwhelming. Because unlike the chaos and uncertainty of the real world, Dark Souls follows rules. The challenge is consistent. Your progress, however slow, is guaranteed as long as you persist. One player described it perfectly. They said that Dark Souls taught them that failure is just a learning process. It doesn't mean you are a failure, just that you need to keep trying until you find a way to move forward. This reframing of failure, from a judgment of personal worth to simply a step in the learning process, is incredibly powerful. And this is just the beginning. This relationship with failure and death forms the foundation upon which all the other psychological elements of Dark Souls are built. Because once you've accepted that failure is acceptable, once you've been desensitized to the fear of dying, you're free to engage with the deeper themes the game explores. You're ready to confront what it means to lose yourself entirely. You're ready to face the concept of hollowing. Part 2. Hollowing, a metaphor for depression and loss of purpose. If death is Dark Souls' first lesson, hollowing is its second, and far more disturbing one. Hollowing is the state all undead are doomed to eventually reach if they lose their sense of purpose. It's a slow degradation of the self, a withering away of everything that makes you who you are, until all that remains is a mindless husk that attacks anything with souls. The first time you really understand what hollowing means, it's chilling. You meet the crestfallen warrior at Firelink Shrine early in your journey. He's given up, lost hope. He sits by the bonfire and essentially tells you that everything is pointless, that the prophecy you're following is probably a lie, that you'll end up just like all the others. Eventually, if you progress far enough, you find that he's gone hollow. He's become hostile, lost to the very fate he feared. The same happens to other characters throughout the game. Laurentius, the kindly pyromancer who offers to teach you his art, can go hollow if you lead him down the wrong path. Siegmeyer of Katarina, the jovial knight who becomes a recurring companion, meets a tragic end related to losing his purpose. Again and again, Dark Souls shows you what happens when someone loses their reason to keep going. And here's what makes this so psychologically resonant. Hollowing is an almost perfect metaphor for depression. Depression isn't just sadness. It's a loss of meaning, a flattening of emotional experience, a fading of the self. People with depression often describe feeling hollow, empty, as though they're going through the motions of life without really being present. They lose interest in activities they once enjoyed. They struggle to find purpose or meaning in their daily existence. In severe cases, they may lose their sense of identity entirely, feeling disconnected from who they used to be. This is exactly what hollowing represents in Dark Souls. The undead curse doesn't just trap you in a cycle of death and rebirth. It slowly erodes your humanity, your memories, your sense of self. Every death, every resurrection, takes something from you. And if you lose sight of what you're fighting for, if you can't find a reason to continue, the curse completes its work and you become hollow. The visual representation of hollowing is equally telling. Hollow enemies in Dark Souls are emaciated, their skin pulled tight over bones, moving with jerky, purposeless motions. They're often found repeating the same meaningless actions endlessly. A hollow soldier stands at a post, staring at nothing, because that was the last order they remember receiving before losing themselves. A hollow merchant continues selling wares long after they've lost any understanding of what they're doing or why. This resonates deeply with how depression can trap people in routines that have lost all meaning. Going through the motions of daily life, doing things because that's what you're supposed to do, but feeling no connection to any of it. The light has gone out, but the machinery keeps running on momentum alone. But Dark Souls doesn't just present hollowing as an inevitability. It shows you how to fight it. And the answer every single time comes down to purpose. Characters in Dark Souls who maintain a sense of purpose resist hollowing. Solaire of Astora continues his quest to find his own son. And as long as that search gives him meaning, he remains himself. The same is true for Siegmeyer, who maintains his jolly nature through his determination to overcome challenges and prove his worth. Even Patches, the untrustworthy trickster, remains unhallowed through his consistent purpose of looking out for himself. The player character is unique in that your purpose is defined by you, the person holding the controller. This creates a fascinating parallel. In the game, you fight hollowing by having a goal, by pursuing something that matters to you. In real life, playing the game becomes its own purpose, its own defense against the kind of purposelessness that characterizes depression. Research has consistently shown that having a sense of purpose is one of the strongest protective factors against depression and one of the most important elements of recovery. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, wrote extensively about this in his book Man's Search for Meaning. He argued that finding meaning even in suffering is essential to psychological survival. This existential approach to psychology aligns perfectly with the themes of Dark Souls. Players dealing with depression have described Dark Souls as helpful precisely because it gives them a concrete purpose when real life feels purposeless. The goals in the game are clear. Reach the next bonfire, defeat the boss, ring the bell, kindle the flame. These goals might seem arbitrary, but they're achievable, and achieving them provides a sense of progress when progress in other areas of life feels impossible. One player on Reddit wrote about their experience with depression, describing how they found life exceedingly difficult and had extensive experience with depressive episodes. But playing Dark Souls helped them realize something important. In the game, you have to face the same obstacles time and time again until you learn how to overcome them. It might take many attempts, failing and trying again, but when you finally figure out how to defeat that enemy, the feeling is uplifting and motivating. This player connected this directly to their approach to depression, seeing it not as a permanent state but as a challenge to overcome through persistent effort. The concept of hollowing also addresses something rarely discussed in mainstream conversations about mental health: the fear of losing yourself. Depression doesn't just hurt, it threatens your very identity. You look in the mirror and barely recognize the person staring back. You wonder if you'll ever feel like yourself again, or if this empty, numb version is all that's left. Dark Souls validates this fear by making it literal. Yes, you can lose yourself. Yes, the curse can win. The hollows you fight were once people like you, with hopes and dreams and personalities. Now they're gone, worn away by time and suffering and loss of purpose. It's horrifying because it acknowledges that the fear is real and justified. In Dark Souls 2, this theme is reinforced through a different hollowing mechanic. Each time you die, you lose a small percentage of your maximum health, eventually capping at 50%. This progressive weakening mirrors how repeated setbacks and failures can compound, making each subsequent challenge harder. The game is showing how the cycle of struggle can wear you down over time if you don't find ways to restore yourself. In the game, through human effigies, in life, through rest and support. But the game also says, not yet, not today. As long as you keep fighting, you're still you. As long as you have a reason to continue, hollowing can be resisted. This is symbolized by the humanity mechanic. Using humanity at a bonfire reverses your hollowed state, restoring your connection to other players, improving your defenses, allowing you to kindle bonfires. It's temporary, yes. You'll die again, lose your humanity again, but you can always reclaim it if you try. This mirrors the reality of living with depression. Recovery isn't usually a single dramatic transformation. It's a daily choice to keep going, to keep engaging with life, to keep holding on to meaning even when everything feels meaningless. There will be setbacks. There will be times when the darkness returns. But that doesn't mean the fight was pointless. It means the fight continues. The NPCs in Dark Souls who successfully resist hollowing all share something beyond just having purpose. They have specific, personal purposes that matter to them as individuals. Solaire seeks his son, his own enlightenment. Siegmeyer seeks adventure and to prove his honor. Anastasia, the mute fire keeper, faithfully tends her bonfire. Their purposes aren't grand or universally significant. They're personal quests that give their existence meaning. This is an important lesson about depression recovery that Dark Souls teaches through its narrative. Your purpose doesn't have to be objectively important. It doesn't have to change the world or impress anyone else. It just has to matter to you. For some players, that purpose might be seeing the story through to the end. For others, it might be mastering a particular build or defeating every boss. The specific goal matters less than having one. There's also profound wisdom in how the game handles the fate of characters who do go hollow. They're not erased from the story. They become enemies you must face and ultimately defeat. This can be interpreted as a form of mercy, releasing them from the hollow existence they're trapped in. But it's also a warning. If you give up, if you lose your purpose, you don't just fade away. You become an obstacle for others, a cautionary tale. This resonates with how depression affects not just the individual but those around them. When someone loses themselves to depression, their relationships suffer. They may withdraw, push people away, or become hostile. They're not themselves anymore, and the people who care about them have to deal with that loss. Dark Souls doesn't shy away from showing this difficult reality, but the game also shows the limits of intervention. Even with your help, Siegmeyer's story ends tragically. Despite surviving the challenges you help him through, he eventually hollows at Ash Lake, consumed by despair at repeatedly needing rescue. His daughter Sieglind must put him down. However, if you save Solaire from a certain fate in Lost Izalith, he can fulfill his quest and find the meaning he sought, suggesting that purpose can protect against hollowing when genuinely maintained. The phrase, "Don't you dare go hollow," becomes a mantra in the Dark Souls community. NPCs say it to you. Players say it to each other. It's simultaneously a warning, a plea, and a show of solidarity. Don't lose yourself. Don't give up. Keep fighting. I'm fighting too, and I want to see you make it through this. This simple phrase has taken on profound meaning for players struggling with mental health issues. It's been shared in Reddit threads about depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation. People get it tattooed on their bodies. They use it as a reminder that giving up is always an option, but it's not the only option, and others are invested in seeing them choose differently. The connection between hollowing and depression goes even deeper when you consider the game's treatment of memory. In Dark Souls 2, memory is explicitly connected to maintaining your sense of self. One character, Aldea, speaks about how undead lose their memories over time, forgetting who they were and what they cared about. This memory loss is part of the hollowing process, the gradual erosion of identity. This aligns with research on depression and memory. People with depression often experience memory impairment, particularly for positive memories. They may struggle to recall happy times or past accomplishments. This creates a distorted view where the past, present, and future all seem equally bleak, because the memories that would contradict this view become inaccessible. By making memory loss part of hollowing, Dark Souls acknowledges how depression doesn't just affect your current state but rewrites your entire narrative. You forget that things were ever better. You forget that you were ever different. And without those memories, without that connection to who you were, it becomes almost impossible to maintain hope for who you might become. The cure, then, isn't just about finding purpose in the abstract. It's about maintaining connection to yourself, to your memories, to your identity. It's about refusing to let the curse take those things from you. Every time you rest at a bonfire, you're reinforcing your memories, preserving your sense of self. Every time you use humanity, you're actively choosing to be human rather than hollow. This active choice is crucial. Dark Souls doesn't present recovery as passive or automatic. You have to work for it. You have to choose it repeatedly, despite setbacks and suffering. This might seem harsh, but it's also realistic and ultimately empowering. You're not waiting to be saved. You're not hoping for the curse to lift on its own. You're fighting it actively, continuously. And that brings us to perhaps the most powerful psychological aspect of the hollowing mechanic. It makes explicit what depression does implicitly. It shows you the stakes. When you meet a character like the crestfallen warrior and see what he becomes, you understand viscerally what you're fighting against. The enemy isn't just the monsters and bosses. It's the loss of self. It's the surrender to meaninglessness. By externalizing this internal struggle, by making it a visible part of the game world, Dark Souls helps players recognize and name what they might be experiencing in their own lives. It gives them a framework for understanding depression not as a character flaw or personal weakness, but as a genuine threat that must be actively resisted. This understanding can be transformative. Instead of being ashamed of struggling, instead of wondering what's wrong with them, players can say, I'm fighting hollowing. I'm defending my humanity. I'm maintaining my purpose in the face of a curse that wants to take it from me. It's still a difficult fight, but it's a fight with meaning, a fight worth having. And ultimately, that's what Dark Souls teaches through hollowing. The fight itself is what keeps you human. Not winning the fight, not being strong enough to never struggle, but continuing to fight despite everything. As long as you're still swinging your sword, still climbing out of the darkness, still searching for the next bonfire, you haven't lost. You're still you. Part 3, Existentialism and the Search for Meaning. Dark Souls doesn't give you answers. It gives you questions wrapped in ambiguity and left for you to unravel. The story isn't told through cutscenes and exposition. It's hidden in item descriptions, cryptic dialogue, environmental details, and connections you have to make yourself. Even the game's central conflict, the choice between linking the fire or letting it fade, is presented without clear moral guidance. The game refuses to tell you what the right choice is, or if there even is a right choice. This approach is deeply rooted in existentialist philosophy, a school of thought that emerged in the 19th and 20th centuries concerned with questions of meaning, choice, freedom, and the human condition. And understanding this philosophical framework helps us understand why Dark Souls resonates so powerfully with so many players. Existentialism, at its core, grapples with the idea that existence precedes essence. This concept, articulated by philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre, means that humans first exist, then encounter themselves and the world, and only afterward define who they are through their choices and actions. We're not born with a predetermined purpose or nature. We have to create it ourselves. This is exactly the situation you find yourself in when you begin Dark Souls. You wake up in a cell in the undead asylum with no context, no explanation, just a corpse that drops a key into your cell and a vague suggestion that you might be chosen. But chosen for what? To do what? By whom? The game doesn't say. Oscar of Astora mentions a prophecy about an undead chosen to ring the bells of awakening and succeed Lord Gwyn. But even he admits he doesn't really know if it's true. You're thrown into the world, to use philosopher Martin Heidegger's term. This concept of thrownness describes how we find ourselves existing in a world we didn't choose, in circumstances we didn't create, without instruction manual or clear purpose. And from that position of radical uncertainty, we have to figure out what to do, who to be, what to pursue. The game emphasizes this through its minimal tutorialization. Apart from basic control instructions, you're given almost nothing. You have to explore, experiment, fail, learn. The world doesn't care if you understand it. It existed before you, it will exist after you, and it owes you no explanations. This can be frustrating, but it's also strangely liberating. Since nothing is explained, everything is possible. You're free to engage with the world on your own terms. This freedom, this radical autonomy, is central to existentialist thought. Sartre argued that we are condemned to be free, meaning that freedom isn't just a gift but a burden. We have to choose, and we're responsible for our choices, even when we'd rather have someone else tell us what to do. This weight of choice is palpable in Dark Souls. Do you trust Patches when he says there's treasure down that hole? Do you free Lautrec even though he seems suspicious? Do you give the Firekeeper soul to Anastasia or use it to upgrade your Estus flask? Do you kill Priscilla even though she hasn't attacked you? Do you ultimately link the fire or walk away? Every choice is yours to make, and the game refuses to judge you for it. This non-judgmental approach is remarkable and rare in gaming. Most games have clear good and evil paths, with rewards and punishments to guide you toward the intended right choice. Dark Souls doesn't do this. It presents choices and their consequences without moral commentary. Characters may react, but the game itself maintains ambiguity. Consider the endings. Linking the fire prolongs the age of fire, but at the cost of your own life burned as fuel, and it's only temporary anyway. The fire will fade again eventually. Walking away allows the Age of Dark to begin, which might be humanity's true destiny, but it's described in ominous terms and the consequences are unknown. Neither ending is presented as clearly better. Neither gives you a triumphant victory cutscene. Both are melancholic, ambiguous, and leave you questioning. This moral ambiguity reflects existentialist ethics, which rejects absolute, universal moral laws in favor of authentic choice. What matters isn't following predetermined rules, but making genuine decisions based on your own understanding and values. The game trusts you to engage with these questions seriously, to think about what you believe the right thing to do is, rather than telling you. This relates to another existentialist concept: authenticity. To live authentically means to acknowledge your freedom and responsibility, to make choices based on your genuine values rather than conforming to social expectations or seeking external validation. It means accepting the uncertainty and anxiety that comes with freedom. Dark Souls practically forces authenticity upon you. You can't play the game by following a strategy guide step by step. Well, you can, but you're missing the point. You can't let the game or other players make decisions for you. You have to engage with it directly, bring yourself to it, make it your own experience. And because the challenge is so significant, you can't fake engagement. You have to be genuinely present, genuinely trying, genuinely invested. The game's famous difficulty serves this purpose. It's not difficult for its own sake or to frustrate players. It's difficult to demand your full attention, to require genuine effort, to make success meaningful. A boss you beat first try without breaking a sweat isn't memorable. A boss you fight 20 times, studying its patterns, adapting your strategy, finally triumphing through skill and determination, that becomes significant. That becomes your story. This connects to another philosopher whose influence is clearly felt in Dark Souls: Albert Camus and his essay, The Myth of Sisyphus. Camus tells the story of Sisyphus, condemned by the gods to roll a boulder up a mountain for eternity, only to have it roll back down each time he nears the summit, forcing him to start over. Camus uses this myth to explore the concept of the absurd, the conflict between our desire for meaning and the universe's indifference to that desire. Life can seem meaningless, especially when viewed from a cosmic perspective. We struggle and strive, but eventually we all die, and the universe continues without us. So what's the point? Camus' answer is that we must imagine Sisyphus happy. Not despite his eternal, futile task, but because of his decision to engage with it fully. Sisyphus rebels against the meaninglessness of his situation by finding meaning in the struggle itself. The act of pushing the boulder becomes his purpose, his assertion of self against the gods who tried to break him. Dark Souls is filled with Sisyphean imagery and themes. You fight your way through Lord Ran, die, return to the last bonfire, and have to fight through the same areas again. Enemies respawn. Challenges you've overcome before must be overcome again. The cycles of fire and dark have repeated for ages and will continue repeating. Even if you link the fire, it will fade again eventually. The wheel keeps turning. But like Sisyphus, you can choose your relationship with this cycle. You can see it as pointless repetition, or you can find meaning in the act of pushing forward. One player described it perfectly, saying that Dark Souls subconsciously teaches you that everything can be overcome through perseverance, that no matter how dark and bleak life seems, everything gets better if you're willing to put in the hard work. This is the existentialist response to absurdity. Not despair, but engagement. Not passive acceptance, but active defiance through the creation of personal meaning. The universe doesn't care about you? Fine, you'll care about yourself. Life doesn't come with built-in purpose? You'll create your own purpose. The struggle seems endless? You'll find meaning in the struggle itself. The game's world reinforces this theme. Lord Ran is a dying world, clinging to the last remnants of a fading age. The gods are gone or hollow. The great kingdoms have crumbled. Everything suggests entropy, decay, the inevitable heat-death of this universe. And yet, life persists. Characters pursue their quests. Players push forward. Even in the face of certain ultimate failure, the struggle continues. This persistence without guarantee of success, this continuation despite knowing how the story ultimately ends, is quintessentially existentialist. It's choosing to be engaged with life even though you know you'll die. It's pursuing goals even though they might not matter in the cosmic sense. It's caring about things despite the fact that caring makes you vulnerable. The crestfallen warrior fails this existentialist test. He sees the futility, the endless cycle, the decay, and responds with resignation. He gives up. He stops trying to create meaning, and so he goes hollow. The player character, by contrast, keeps going even with full awareness of the same futility. That choice, that continued effort, is what preserves humanity. This is where Dark Souls offers something powerful to players struggling with depression or existential crisis. It acknowledges that yes, you might fail. Yes, the world is often cruel and meaningless. Yes, suffering is real and sometimes seems pointless. But it also says, and yet you can choose to continue. You can choose to care. You can choose to create meaning through your actions and choices, even if that meaning isn't universal or permanent. There's a concept in existentialism called existence precedes essence, which we touched on earlier, but it's worth exploring more deeply. This means that you're not born with a fixed nature or destiny. You create yourself through your choices. In Dark Souls terms, you're not destined to be the chosen undead just because a prophecy says so. You become the chosen undead by choosing to pursue that path, by choosing to continue when others give up, by choosing to engage with the world rather than retreat into hollowness. The game's character customization reinforces this. You create your character at the beginning, choosing their appearance and starting class, but these choices are barely relevant to who your character ultimately becomes. The class just determines starting equipment and stats. Any character can eventually use any weapon, learn any spell, pursue any build. Your essence, your nature as a character, emerges from how you play, what you prioritize, which challenges you embrace. This same principle applies to the moral choices in the game. You're not a hero or a villain based on some inherent quality. You become what you choose to become through your actions. Save Solaire or let him go mad. Help Siegmeyer or leave him to his fate. Join the Dark Wraiths and invade other players or protect them as a Dark Moon. These choices define you, The game even allows you to change your mind, to abandon covenants and join new ones, to shift your approach mid-playthrough. This flexibility reflects the existentialist idea that you're never locked into a single identity. You're always free to choose differently, to redefine yourself through new choices and actions. There's also the matter of NPCs and their own existential struggles. Solaire seeks meaning through finding his own sun, his own source of enlightenment. He's aware that this might be foolish, that others mock him for it, but he pursues it anyway because it gives his existence purpose. Artorias traveled into the abyss to combat evil, was corrupted by it, but even in his corrupted state, some remnant of his original purpose persists. Sif guards Artorias' grave, faithful to a master long dead, because that loyalty gives him purpose. These characters illustrate different responses to the fundamental existential questions. Some, like Solaire, if you save him, successfully maintain their purpose and remain themselves. Others, like Artorias, are corrupted or destroyed in pursuit of their goals. Still others, like the crestfallen warrior, give up and hollow. The game doesn't judge these outcomes. It simply presents them as possibilities, different paths through the same fundamental human condition. The ambiguity of the lore itself functions as an existentialist statement. The game presents fragments of information, contradictory accounts, mysterious references, and leaves you to construct your own understanding. There's no authoritative narrator explaining what really happened or what it all means. You have to interpret, to choose what to believe, to create your own narrative from the pieces available. This can be frustrating for players who want clear answers, who want to know the objective truth of the story. But from an existentialist perspective, that frustration is the point. Life doesn't come with an instruction manual explaining what it all means. We have access to partial information, contradictory perspectives, and our own subjective experiences. From these fragments, we construct meaning. The process is uncertain, sometimes uncomfortable, but ultimately necessary if we want to live authentically. The act of playing Dark Souls becomes a microcosm of existential engagement with life. You're thrown into a world you don't fully understand, given incomplete information, faced with difficult choices, challenged by significant obstacles, and ultimately responsible for creating your own meaning and purpose. The game can't tell you why you should keep playing any more than life can tell you why you should keep living. You have to find your own reasons, create your own meaning, choose your own engagement. And for many players, this resonates profoundly. The game validates their experience of life as uncertain, difficult, and sometimes seemingly meaningless, while simultaneously demonstrating that meaning can be created through choice, effort, and persistence. You're not waiting for the game to give you purpose. You're creating purpose through your continued engagement, through your refusal to go hollow. This existentialist framework also helps explain why Dark Souls can be therapeutic despite, or perhaps because of, its difficulty and bleakness. It doesn't offer false comfort or pretend that struggle isn't real. Instead, it says, yes, existence is difficult. Yes, the world is often hostile and unfair. Yes, you will fail repeatedly. And yet, meaning is possible. Purpose is possible. Not given from above, not guaranteed or easy, but possible through your own choices and actions. For someone struggling with depression, with existential crisis, with the feeling that nothing matters, this message can be powerful. The game meets you in that dark place, acknowledges the darkness, and then shows you that even there, even in the deepest depths of Lord Ran or the abyss itself, choice and meaning are still possible. Light can still be kindled. Humanity can still be preserved. Not because the world is kind or fair, but because you choose to make it so. This is the heart of existentialist thought and the heart of Dark Souls. You are free, terrifyingly free, to create meaning in an indifferent universe. And that freedom, that responsibility, is both the burden you carry and the source of your strength. Part 4, Resilience, Perseverance, and the Growth Mindset. Let's talk about what happens in your brain when you finally beat that boss who's been defeating you for hours, or when you discover a shortcut that connects back to a familiar bonfire, or when you successfully parry an attack for the first time after dozens of failed attempts. There's a rush of dopamine, sure, but it's more than that. You've just experienced what psychologists call a mastery experience, one of the most powerful builders of self-efficacy and resilience. Self-efficacy, a concept developed by psychologist Albert Bandura, refers to your belief in your ability to succeed in specific situations or accomplish tasks. It's not the same as self-esteem, which is about how you value yourself overall. Self-efficacy is contextual and skill-specific, and it's incredibly important because it influences which challenges you're willing to take on, how much effort you'll invest, and how you respond to obstacles and failures. Bandura identified 4 main sources of self-efficacy: mastery experiences, vicarious experiences, social persuasion, and physiological states. Dark Souls leverages all 4, but it's particularly masterful at creating mastery experiences. A mastery experience is successfully performing a task. It's the most powerful source of self-efficacy because it provides authentic evidence that you can succeed. When you beat Ornstein and Smuff, when you successfully navigate Blighttown, when you defeat Artorias after he's killed you a dozen times, you're not just progressing in the game. You're building concrete proof of your capability. What makes Dark Souls exceptional in this regard is that its challenges are genuinely difficult. The success isn't handed to you. You can't just grind levels until you're overpowered enough to trivialize encounters. Skill, strategy, patience, and learning are required. This means that when you succeed, you know you truly earned it. And that knowledge, that evidence of capability, transfers beyond the game. Research on video games and resilience has found that the challenge-skill balance in games like Dark Souls is particularly effective at building what psychologists call psychological resilience. This is your ability to adapt to stress, adversity, trauma, or significant sources of stress. It's not about being unaffected by difficulty, but about being able to recover and even grow from it. A study conducted at Uppsala University specifically examined resilience building in Soulsborne games. The researchers found that the trial-and-error philosophy, the challenging difficulty, and the narrative elements combined to foster players' resilience and positive coping strategies. The games satisfy basic psychological needs while pushing players outside their comfort zones in a controlled, safe environment. This relates to another psychological concept, the growth mindset developed by psychologist Carol Dweck. A growth mindset is the belief that abilities and intelligence can be developed through dedication and hard work. This contrasts with a fixed mindset, which sees abilities as static traits that can't fundamentally change. People with growth mindsets are more likely to embrace challenges, persist through setbacks, learn from criticism, and find inspiration in others' success. People with fixed mindsets tend to avoid challenges, give up easily, see effort as fruitless, and feel threatened by others' success. Dark Souls practically forces a growth mindset. You can't maintain the belief that you're simply not good enough to beat a particular challenge when the game provides clear evidence otherwise. Speedrunners beat the entire game in under an hour. Players complete it at level 1 without taking a single hit. If they can do it, the limitation isn't inherent ability but current skill level, which can be improved. The phrase, "you can't do this yet," becomes crucial. When you encounter a new boss and get destroyed, the appropriate response isn't, "I can't beat this boss," but "I can't beat this boss yet." That single word transforms the statement from one of fixed limitation to one of growing capability. It shifts the question from, "Am I good enough?" to, "What do I need to learn?" This reframing is powerful not just in the game but in life. Many people give up on challenges, whether learning a new skill, pursuing a difficult goal, or changing ingrained habits, because they view failure as evidence of fixed inability rather than as part of the learning process. Dark Souls trains you out of this fixed mindset by making learning through failure the core gameplay loop. Every death teaches you something. The enemy has a grab attack you didn't know about. Now you know. That platform is a trap. Noted for next time. The boss has a second phase you weren't prepared for. Okay, now you can prepare. This transforms failure from verdict to lesson, from ending to beginning. Instead of I failed, the thought becomes I learned. The game also teaches patience and emotional regulation, key components of resilience. You can't button mash through encounters in Dark Souls. Panicking leads to death. You have to stay calm, observe patterns, wait for openings, execute precisely. This trains a particular kind of emotional control under pressure. When you first start playing, you probably panic frequently. The boss is terrifying, the situation is intense, and your instinct is to mash roll and attack wildly. This usually gets you killed. But over time, you learn to breathe, to watch, to wait. You develop what psychologists call emotional regulation, the ability to manage your emotional responses, particularly in stressful situations. This isn't just useful in the game. Players report that Dark Souls help them develop better emotional regulation in their daily lives. When faced with stressful situations, they remember, breathe, observe, respond deliberately. Don't panic. Don't rush. Take it one step at a time. These lessons transfer surprisingly well to real-world challenges. There's also the matter of what psychologists call distress tolerance, the ability to tolerate negative emotions without being overwhelmed by them or resorting to unhealthy coping mechanisms. Dark Souls builds distress tolerance through repeated exposure to frustration, failure, and difficulty in a context where those feelings are safe and temporary. You feel frustrated when you die to the same boss repeatedly, but you learn that this frustration isn't permanent and doesn't mean you should quit. You feel anxious exploring a new area, but you learn that acting despite anxiety is possible and often rewarded. You feel discouraged after a setback, but you learn that discouragement is just a feeling, not a fact, and you can choose to continue anyway. These experiences of tolerating negative emotions while continuing to engage productively build a kind of psychological muscle. You become more capable of sitting with uncomfortable feelings without being derailed by them. This is an essential skill for managing depression, anxiety, and many other mental health challenges. The community aspect also plays into resilience building through vicarious experiences and social persuasion, two other sources of self-efficacy that Bandura identified. Vicarious experiences are seeing others succeed, which can boost your belief that you can succeed too. Dark Souls provides this through bloodstains, messages, and the broader community. When you see a message saying, "Praise the sun," or "Don't give up, skeleton," you're receiving a tiny dose of social persuasion, encouragement from others who have been where you are. It's not much, but it's something. When you see a bloodstain showing how another player died to the same enemy that just killed you, you get vicarious experience. Others have struggled here too, but many have gotten through. The broader community, whether on forums, Reddit, YouTube, or social media, provides extensive vicarious experiences. You can watch others beat challenges you're stuck on, read about their strategies, see that it's possible. This is different from just looking up a solution because you're seeing evidence that other players, people like you, have succeeded. If they can do it, maybe you can too. Research on Dark Souls and mental health consistently finds that the community aspect is crucial. Players describe finding comfort in knowing they're not alone in their struggle. The phrase, "Don't you dare go hollow," has become a community rallying cry, a form of collective social persuasion encouraging persistence. One player described their experience with Dark Souls during a difficult period in their life. They were dealing with severe depression and found getting out of bed nearly impossible. But they made a deal with themselves. If they could play Dark Souls for an hour, focusing on the challenge, that counted as a successful day. The game gave them a reason to keep trying, concrete evidence of their capability when they succeeded, and a community that encouraged persistence. This illustrates how Dark Souls can function as a form of behavioral activation, a therapeutic technique for depression. Behavioral activation is based on the idea that engaging in meaningful or pleasurable activities can improve mood and break the cycle of depression. The key is finding activities that provide a sense of accomplishment or progress. Dark Souls is almost perfectly designed for this. Every session offers concrete, measurable progress. You got further through the level. You learned a boss's attack pattern. You found a new shortcut. You upgraded your weapon. Even when you don't accomplish your ultimate goal for the session, you've still moved forward in some way. And this evidence of progress combats the depression-related cognitive distortions that tell you nothing you do matters or that you're not capable of improvement. The game's design also supports what psychologists call self-determination theory, specifically the need for competence, autonomy, and relatedness. We've touched on these before, but they're worth exploring in detail regarding resilience. Competence is the feeling that you're effective in your activities, that you're capable and skilled. Dark Souls builds competence through its difficulty curve and mastery experiences. You start barely able to survive the undead burg and end slaying gods. That progression isn't automatic or trivial. It represents genuine skill development, and that skill is demonstrable, measurable, yours. Autonomy is the sense of being self-directed, making your own choices. Dark Souls respects player autonomy by offering multiple viable approaches to every challenge. Do you want to tank hits with heavy armor and a shield, dodge everything in light armor, keep enemies at range with magic or bows, or some hybrid approach? Do you want to summon help or solo everything? Explore thoroughly or rush to bosses? The game supports all these approaches and many more. Your playthrough is yours, shaped by your choices. Relatedness is feeling connected to others. Dark Souls achieves this through its unique multiplayer systems and the broader community. You're not directly interacting with most players you encounter, but you're aware of them through messages, bloodstains, phantoms, and summon signs. This creates what the developers called sharing of loneliness, a paradoxical feeling of connection through shared struggle even without direct communication. When these three needs are met, people experience intrinsic motivation and are more psychologically healthy. Dark Souls satisfies all three in ways that many games and even many real-world activities don't. This is part of why it can be so engaging and, for some players, genuinely therapeutic. There's also something to be said for how the game handles progress itself. In many games, progress is measured in explicit terms: experience points, levels, quest completion percentages. Dark Souls has these elements, but the meaningful progress is often more subtle. You're not stronger just because your level increased from 45 to 46. You're stronger because you learned not to panic roll, to manage your stamina better, to recognize attack patterns faster. This type of progress, skill-based rather than stat-based, is more transferable to real life and more psychologically meaningful. You can't level up your attributes in real life, but you can develop skills, learn patterns, improve your judgment. The confidence you gain from mastering a Dark Souls boss through genuine skill development is different from the confidence you might gain from simply grinding until your character is overpowered. Players frequently describe having breakthroughs not just in the game but in their understanding of themselves. One player wrote about how they always considered themselves bad at games requiring precise timing and reflexes. Dark Souls challenged this belief by requiring exactly those skills. After hours of practice, they beat Artorias, a boss known for fast, punishing attacks. This success didn't just mean they beat a video game boss. It meant their self-perception was wrong. They weren't bad at anything inherently. They just hadn't developed the skill yet. This is the growth mindset in action, and it's incredibly empowering. How many other areas of life do we avoid or limit ourselves in because we've decided we're bad at them? How many opportunities do we miss because we see our abilities as fixed rather than developable? Dark Souls directly challenges this limited thinking. The game also teaches grit, a concept popularized by psychologist Angela Duckworth. Grit is passion and perseverance for long-term goals. It's not just working hard, but continuing to work toward a goal even when progress is slow, setbacks occur, and success is distant. Gritty people maintain effort and interest despite failures, adversity, and plateaus in progress. Dark Souls cultivates grit by making long-term goals difficult but worthwhile. Beating the game takes dozens of hours, most of which will involve failure, frustration, and slow progress. But players who persist, who maintain their goal through all these challenges, develop grit. And grit, research shows, is a better predictor of success in many domains than talent or intelligence. What's particularly interesting is how the game balances short-term and long-term goals. Your long-term goal might be to beat the game, but that's broken down into medium-term goals like defeating the next boss, and short-term goals like making it to the next bonfire. This hierarchical goal structure keeps you motivated even when the ultimate goal feels distant. You might not be close to beating the game, but you can focus on just surviving the next encounter. This goal-setting strategy is used in cognitive behavioral therapy and other therapeutic approaches. Large, distant goals can feel overwhelming and demotivating. Breaking them into smaller, achievable steps makes progress feel possible and provides more frequent reinforcement. One final aspect of resilience that Dark Souls builds is what psychologists call self-compassion. This might seem counterintuitive for a game known for punishing players, but hear me out. Self-compassion involves treating yourself with kindness when you fail or struggle, recognizing that imperfection and failure are part of the shared human experience, and maintaining a balanced awareness of negative emotions rather than over-identifying with them. Dark Souls teaches self-compassion through normalization of failure. When you die repeatedly to the same challenge, you can see evidence all around you that others have struggled too. The bloodstains, the messages, the community discussions all reinforce that this is hard for everyone. You're not uniquely terrible. You're experiencing what everyone who plays this game experiences. This shared struggle creates space for self-compassion. You can be frustrated without being self-critical. You can struggle without concluding you're inadequate. The game also teaches balanced awareness of emotions. Yes, dying is frustrating. Yes, losing souls is disappointing. But these emotions are temporary and specific to the situation. They don't define you or mean everything is terrible. The game keeps going. You respawn. Another attempt is available. This emotional resilience, this ability to experience negative emotions without being overwhelmed or defined by them, is a crucial component of psychological health. All of these elements, mastery experiences, growth mindset, emotional regulation, distress tolerance, self-determination, grit, and self-compassion, combine to build genuine psychological resilience. Dark Souls doesn't just teach you how to play a difficult game. It teaches you how to engage with difficulty itself, how to maintain effort and hope in the face of setbacks, how to find meaning in struggle, and how to keep going when every instinct says to quit. And these lessons don't stay contained in the game. Players consistently report that Dark Souls changed how they approach challenges in their real lives. They became more willing to take on difficult tasks, more patient with slow progress, more likely to view setbacks as learning opportunities rather than personal failings, more capable of tolerating discomfort in pursuit of meaningful goals. In short, they became more resilient. Part 5. Isolation and Community. The paradox of multiplayer. There's a profound loneliness to Dark Souls. You traverse vast, often empty landscapes. The few NPCs you encounter are cryptic and distant. Enemies outnumber you massively and show no mercy. The world feels hostile, indifferent to your suffering. You're small, vulnerable, and alone in a dying realm that cares nothing for your survival. And yet, you're never truly alone. This is the beautiful paradox at the heart of Dark Souls multiplayer design. The game creates an intense feeling of isolation while simultaneously connecting you to thousands of other players in subtle, indirect ways. It's a form of connection that respects solitude, that enhances rather than disrupts the lonely atmosphere, and that creates what the game's developers called the sharing of loneliness. In an interview, Dark Souls 2 producer Takashi Miyazo explained this philosophy. They wanted players to share emotions and share loneliness with other people, to get a faint sense of comfort when feeling that another player is facing the same difficulties, but without being able to have direct contact. This indirect, almost ghostly connection defines Dark Souls' approach to multiplayer. Let's start with the most visible form of this connection: bloodstains. When another player dies somewhere in the world, they leave behind a bloodstain that you can see and interact with. Touching it plays back the last few seconds of that player's life, showing you how they died. Sometimes it's instructive, warning you of a trap or ambush. Sometimes it's just darkly amusing. But always, it's a reminder. Other people have been here. Others have struggled. Others have died. This might seem morbid, but it's actually deeply comforting. When you're stuck on a difficult section, seeing dozens of bloodstains tells you that others found it difficult too. You're not uniquely bad at this. This challenge isn't just hard for you. Everyone who came before struggled here as well. This normalization of struggle and failure reduces shame and self-criticism. There's also the messages system. Players can leave short messages using a limited template of words, warning others about ambushes, pointing out illusory walls, offering encouragement, or sometimes just being silly. These messages can be rated by other players, and if your message gets rated while you're playing, you receive a small heal. This creates moments of connection across time and space. Someone somewhere found your warning helpful. They appreciated your praise the sun at Solaire's bonfire. They needed that don't give up right before the boss fog. You'll never know who they were or talk to them directly, but your message helped them, and their rating helped you in return. This asynchronous, indirect support system is remarkably effective at building a sense of community. You're all struggling through the same world, facing the same challenges, but on your own journeys. The messages are breadcrumbs left by previous travelers, proof that others have walked this path and made it through. Then there are the phantoms, translucent figures you'll occasionally see moving through your world. These are ghosts of other players, visible for a few seconds as they run past or fight enemies in their own worlds. They're not in your world, can't interact with you, but you can see them. Again, this reinforces that others are playing, struggling, persevering, even when you can't see them directly. These passive multiplayer elements create what psychologists might call ambient social presence. You're aware of others without having to interact with them, receiving the psychological benefits of social connection while maintaining autonomy and solitude. For people who struggle with social anxiety or find direct interaction draining, this can be ideal. You get community without pressure, support without obligation. But the game also offers more direct forms of connection through summoning. If you're human, not hollowed, you can see summon signs left by other players offering help. Activating a sign summons that player into your world as a phantom, and they can help you through the area and fight bosses with you. This is the game's version of cooperative multiplayer. What's interesting is how the game frames this cooperation. Summoning help is a choice, not a requirement. You can solo everything if you want. The game respects both approaches. Some players prefer the lonely individual challenge. Others appreciate the camaraderie of teamwork. Neither is right or wrong. Both are valid ways to experience the game. When you do summon help, the cooperation is limited and temporary. Phantoms can't talk to you directly unless you're using external voice chat. They communicate through gestures and actions. They're there to help you progress but will vanish once you beat the area boss or if they die. This temporary, limited cooperation maintains the game's lonely atmosphere while still providing meaningful support. There's something poignant about this impermanence. You and a phantom might fight through a challenging area together, overcoming obstacles that would have been impossible alone, sharing unspoken camaraderie through combat and gesture. Then you beat the boss, and they vanish in a cascade of light, returning to their own world. You'll probably never encounter that specific player again. But for those moments, you weren't alone. This mirrors real-life experiences of temporary connection. Not all relationships are permanent, and that's okay. Sometimes people enter our lives for a brief period, help us through something difficult, and then move on. Dark Souls captures this bittersweet reality beautifully. The game also includes PvP invasions, where hostile players can enter your world to fight you. This might seem to contradict the community and support aspects, but it actually enhances them. The threat of invasion creates tension and vulnerability. You're never completely safe, but this danger makes the moments of cooperation more meaningful. When a phantom helps you fight off an invader, there's genuine gratitude. You faced a threat together and survived. Invasions also contribute to the game's themes of hostility and mistrust. Not everyone you encounter will be helpful. Some will actively try to harm you. This creates a more complex social landscape than simple cooperation would. You have to judge whether to trust summon signs, whether to engage with invaders, whether to become an invader yourself. These choices add moral dimension to the multiplayer experience. The Covenant system deepens this further. Covenants are factions you can join, each with different goals and philosophies. Some encourage cooperation, like the Warriors of Sunlight who specialize in helping others with bosses. Others promote invasion and PvP, like the Darkwraiths who seek to steal humanity. Joining a covenant is a statement about how you want to interact with the community, what role you want to play in this world. This creates a complex social ecosystem where players take on different roles: helpers, invaders, protectors, chaos agents. No role is inherently better than others. They all contribute to the game's social dynamics. Even invasions, as frustrating as they can be, create memorable moments and stories that players share. The community that has formed around Dark Souls extends beyond the game itself. Reddit communities, YouTube channels, wikis, Discord servers, all dedicated to discussing, analyzing, and sharing experiences with the game. This broader community provides the more direct connection that the in-game systems intentionally avoid. Here, players share strategies, discuss lore, offer encouragement, and tell stories about their experiences. The phrase "don't you dare go hollow" has become a community mantra, used to encourage people struggling not just with the game but with real-life challenges. Players openly discuss mental health, using Dark Souls as a framework for talking about depression, anxiety, and recovery. This community has been remarkably supportive and inclusive, especially given gaming culture's reputation for toxicity. While negative elements exist, the overall ethos of the Dark Souls community tends toward encouragement and mutual support. Experienced players help newcomers. Struggling players receive advice and encouragement. There's shared pride in overcoming the game's challenges. Research on Dark Souls and mental health consistently highlights the importance of this community. Players don't just benefit from playing the game. They benefit from being part of a community of people who understand what the game represents and what beating it means. This shared understanding creates bonds and offers support that can be genuinely therapeutic. One player described joining the Dark Souls subreddit during a depressive episode. They posted about struggling with a particular boss and feeling like giving up, drawing parallels to feeling that way about life in general. The responses were overwhelmingly supportive. People shared their own struggles, offered tactical advice, and encouraged persistence. Several people told them, "Don't you dare go hollow," and explained what that meant to them personally. The player reported that this support helped them through a difficult period, both in the game and in life. This is the full manifestation of the game's multiplayer design philosophy. The in-game systems create ambient connection and temporary cooperation while preserving solitude and individual struggle. The broader community provides more sustained, explicit support and connection. Together, they create an experience that acknowledges and respects loneliness while offering pathways out of it. There's something psychologically important about this balance. Complete isolation is harmful to mental health. Humans are social creatures who need connection. But constant connection, particularly forced or intrusive connection, can also be draining and counterproductive. Dark Souls finds a middle path: connection that respects autonomy, support that doesn't demand reciprocity, community that allows individual space. For people dealing with depression, anxiety, or other conditions that can make socializing difficult, this balance can be ideal. You can engage with the community as much or as little as you want. You can summon help when you need it or face challenges alone. You can leave messages for others or just read theirs. The game accommodates different social needs and preferences without judgment. The sharing of loneliness that Miyazo described is, perhaps paradoxically, a form of connection. When you're lonely and isolated, knowing that others feel the same way can provide comfort. It's not that misery loves company in a schadenfreude sense, but that shared experience creates understanding and reduces the feeling of being uniquely broken or struggling alone. Dark Souls doesn't try to eliminate loneliness. It acknowledges that the journey through Lordran, like the journey through life, is fundamentally individual. No one can walk your path for you. But it also shows that even on an individual journey, you can find moments of connection, evidence of others who have walked similar paths, support when you need it, and a community of people who understand what you're going through. This nuanced approach to multiplayer and community offers a model that could be applied more broadly, both in game design and in thinking about social support for mental health. Sometimes what people need isn't constant connection or forced socialization, but the knowledge that others are out there, struggling with similar challenges, and that help is available when needed while still respecting individual autonomy and the personal nature of the struggle. In a world that often feels increasingly isolated despite, or because of, constant digital connection, Dark Souls' sharing of loneliness feels remarkably wise. It recognizes that loneliness is real, that struggle is often individual, but that connection is still possible, still meaningful, still worth seeking out, even in small, imperfect, temporary forms. Part 6. Environmental storytelling and psychological atmosphere. Close your eyes and imagine Dark Souls. What comes to mind? Perhaps the oppressive darkness of the Tomb of Giants, where you can barely see a few feet ahead. The poisonous swamps of Blighttown, toxic and claustrophobic. The grandeur of Aner Londo, beautiful but hollow, a facade of glory hiding decay. The haunting emptiness of Ash Lake, ancient dragon skeletons and silence. Each area in Dark Souls has a distinct atmosphere, a unique emotional resonance. And that atmosphere isn't accidental. It's carefully crafted to evoke specific psychological responses. This is what's called environmental storytelling, and Dark Souls is a masterclass in it. Instead of explaining the world's history through dialogue and cutscenes, the environment itself tells the story. The architecture, lighting, sound design, enemy placement, item locations, everything works together to communicate narrative and emotional information without words. Let's start with architecture and what it communicates psychologically. Consider Undead Burg, one of the first areas you explore. The buildings are crumbling, streets are littered with debris. There are bloodstains everywhere, and the few remaining inhabitants are hollow husks. Architecturally, This speaks to abandonment and decay. Psychologically, it creates a sense of desolation and loss. This was once a functioning community. Now its ruins inhabited by mindless undead. The implication is clear. This could happen anywhere, even to you. Compare this to Einerlando, the city of the gods. Here, the architecture is grand, almost overwhelming in scale. Massive columns, soaring ceilings, ornate details, all bathed in golden light. The psychological impact is different. Awe, certainly, but also insignificance. You're small in this place, dwarfed by the architecture. And as you explore further, you discover the truth. It's mostly empty. The grandeur is maintained by illusion. Strip that away, and Einerlando is as dead as Undead Berg, just better lit. This environmental contrast tells a story about power and decay without speaking a word. The gods built monuments to their own glory, but glory doesn't prevent the inevitable decline. Even divinity can't escape time's erosion. And you, the player, walk through these ruins, bearing witness to lost grandeur while forging your own path forward. The verticality of Dark Souls world design also has psychological implications. You're constantly climbing, descending, looking up at destinations far above or down into dark depths below. This vertical progression creates a sense of journey, of struggling upward or delving downward, both classic metaphors for spiritual or psychological journeys. The fact that areas are interconnected, that shortcuts loop back to familiar places, creates a feeling of mastery as you learn the geography. The world feels real, consistent, knowable. Lighting deserves special attention. Dark Souls uses light and darkness purposefully to guide players and create atmosphere. Light often indicates safety. Bonfires are lit, offering rest and healing. Dark areas are dangerous, full of ambushes and unknown threats. This plays on primal psychological responses. Humans evolved to be cautious in darkness, where predators might lurk. The game leverages this innate wariness. But Dark Souls complicates this simple equation. Einerlando is bright but full of danger. The Tomb of Giants is pitch black, but if you're careful, you can navigate it safely. The game teaches you that appearances can deceive, that you can't trust simple indicators of safety or danger. You have to stay alert, question assumptions, verify everything. Sound design contributes enormously to atmosphere. The ambient sounds of different areas, wind howling through Undead Berg, water dripping in the depths, the eerie silence of Ash Lake, all create distinct sonic environments that affect mood and emotional state. The sound of your footsteps changes based on the surface you're walking on, creating a sense of physicality and presence. Enemy sounds are particularly important. You learn to recognize the specific sounds different enemies make, using audio cues to anticipate threats. This creates tension. You hear something in the darkness ahead and recognize it as a particular enemy type, allowing you to prepare. Or you hear something you don't recognize, ramping up anxiety. What is that? What am I about to face? Boss music deserves special mention. Each boss has unique music that reflects their character and intensifies the emotional experience of the fight. Ornstein and Smuffa's music is bombastic and overwhelming, matching the chaos of fighting two powerful bosses simultaneously. Gwyn's music is melancholic and sad, reflecting the tragedy of his character. A once great lord reduced to a hollow shell desperately clinging to fading power. This use of music to create emotional context is powerful. When you finally beat a boss after many attempts, the silence that follows is palpable. The music stops, and for a moment, there's just quiet relief. Then the victory music plays, and you feel genuine triumph. This emotional journey, from anticipation to tension to fear to relief to triumph, is orchestrated through environmental and audio design. The placement of items also tells stories. When you find a corpse in Dark Souls holding a particular item, you can infer something about that person's story. A healer's corpse holding an Estus flask might have been trying to help others. A warrior's corpse with a broken straight sword tried to fight but was under-equipped. A sorcerer's corpse surrounded by enemy bodies went down fighting. These environmental stories create what psychologists call narrative transportation, where you become mentally absorbed in a story. But in Dark Souls, you're not just absorbing a story someone is telling you. You're piecing it together from fragments, making inferences, constructing the narrative yourself. This active engagement is more psychologically impactful than passive consumption. There's also something profound in how the environment reflects thematic content. The decay and ruin you see everywhere isn't just aesthetic. It represents entropy, the inevitable tendency toward disorder and decline. Nothing lasts forever. Even the gods die. Even the greatest kingdoms fall. This could be depressing, but the game pairs it with your continued journey forward. Yes, everything decays, and yet you persist. Your actions matter even in a dying world. Environmental psychologists have a term, psychogeography, which examines how geographic environments affect emotions and behavior. Dark Souls is a masterpiece of psychogeography. Each area is designed to evoke specific emotional and psychological states. Blighttown evokes disgust and discomfort with its toxic swamps, grotesque enemies, and vertical labyrinth of rickety wooden platforms. The depths create claustrophobia with narrow passages, low ceilings, and the constant threat of curse. Sen's Fortress induces anxiety with its deadly traps and narrow walkways over bottomless pits. The Duke's archives feel academic and cold, all sterile stone and imprisoned experiments. These emotional atmospheres aren't random. They reflect the history and purpose of each location while creating varied psychological experiences that keep the journey engaging. You're not just moving through similar environments. Each area has its own character, its own challenges, its own emotional weight. The interconnected world design also creates a sense of place and geography that enhances immersion. When you look out from Firelink Shrine and can see Undead Berg above, Blighttown below, the graveyard to the side, you develop a mental map of the world. You understand where things are in relation to each other. This spatial awareness is psychologically grounding. The world feels coherent and real. This is enhanced by shortcuts that loop back to familiar areas. When you unlock a door or kick down a ladder that connects to a previous area, there's a wonderful aha moment of recognition. You've literally bent the world to your advantage, creating a more efficient path through it. This creates a sense of mastery and ownership over the environment. Environmental details also reward observation and curiosity. If you look carefully, you'll notice things. The way certain enemies are positioned suggests they were doing something before they went hollow. Architectural features that hint at a location's original purpose, visual connections between different areas that suggest relationships. For example, if you look closely at the boss room where you fight the gaping dragon, you can see that it was once a grand chamber, now flooded and repurposed as a lair. The architecture suggests this was an important place in Lordran's past. Now it's infested and abandoned. This environmental storytelling rewards attentiveness and creates a richer understanding of the world. The game also uses environmental design to create what's called cognitive mapping, the psychological process of understanding and remembering spatial environments. By making areas visually and atmospherically distinct, and by connecting them in logical ways, Dark Souls helps you build a mental model of Lordran. This mental model becomes a form of knowledge and mastery. You know this world. You've explored it, mapped it in your mind. This cognitive mapping has practical benefits in the game, helping you navigate and plan routes. But it also creates psychological investment. This isn't just a series of levels you're passing through. It's a place you've come to know, a geography you've mentally inhabited. There's ownership in that knowledge and satisfaction in seeing how it all connects. The environmental design also reinforces themes of isolation and hostility. Most areas are hostile environments filled with enemies and hazards. Safe spaces, bonfires, are rare and precious. This scarcity of safety creates a psychological dynamic where you're always alert, always cautious, always aware that danger could be around the next corner. But it also makes reaching a bonfire profoundly satisfying. That moment of relief, of safety found in a hostile world, is made more powerful by how rare it is. There's also symbolism throughout the environmental design. Fire represents life, safety, and humanity. Darkness represents death, danger, and loss of self. Light can be illusory and deceptive, Einar Londo. Dark can be honest and revealing, what truly lurks in the shadows. These symbolic associations work on a psychological level, tapping into archetypal meanings that resonate across cultures. The fact that most of this environmental storytelling is optional and interpretive is important. The game trusts players to engage with the environment meaningfully or to simply pass through it, as they prefer. Some players will notice every detail, piece together intricate lore, analyze architectural choices. Others will focus on gameplay, experiencing the atmosphere without consciously analyzing it. Both approaches are valid, and the environment serves both. What all this environmental design accomplishes psychologically is the creation of a consistent, coherent world that feels real and lived in, even though it's fantastical. This believability enhances immersion and emotional investment. You're not playing a game set in a fantasy world. You're experiencing a fantasy world that feels like a place, with history, geography, and internal logic. And when that world is as hostile, decaying, and melancholic as Lord Ran, yet you choose to persist through it, to engage with it, to master it, you're making a statement. You're asserting your presence and agency in a world that doesn't care about you. You're finding meaning in a realm of apparent meaninglessness. You're choosing to act despite knowing that everything eventually decays and dies. The environment, through its careful design and atmospheric construction, facilitates this psychological and philosophical engagement. It's not just backdrop. It's an active participant in the game's meaning, communicating themes and evoking emotions that enrich the entire experience. Part 7. The therapeutic potential of Dark Souls. Now we come to the question that perhaps underlies all our previous discussions. Can Dark Souls actually be therapeutic? Can a video game, particularly one known for difficulty and darkness, genuinely help people with mental health challenges? The answer, based on research and countless player testimonials, appears to be yes, with important qualifications. Let's start with the research. A 2025 study published in the Proceedings of the Conference on Human Factors in Computing Systems specifically examined how Dark Souls helps players cope with depression. Researchers analyzed Reddit discussions where players talked about the game in relation to mental health, looking for patterns in how and why players found the game helpful. The study identified several key themes. First, players described how the game cultivated resilience and perseverance through its challenging gameplay. The cycle of failure, learning, and eventual success taught them that difficult challenges can be overcome through persistent effort. This lesson transferred to their real-life struggles with depression, giving them a framework and confidence for dealing with other challenges. Second, the game triggered existential reflections through its symbolic representations of depression, particularly the concept of hollowing. Players saw parallels between hollowing and their own experiences of losing purpose, motivation, and sense of self during depressive episodes. This recognition was validating. The game acknowledged that yes, you can lose yourself, but it also demonstrated that this loss isn't inevitable. As long as you maintain purpose, you resist hollowing. This became a powerful metaphor for fighting depression. Third, the game enabled supportive online communities and interactions. The community aspect, Both the in-game passive multiplayer and the broader community on forums and social media provided connection, encouragement, and a sense of belonging. Players felt less alone in their struggles when they could connect with others who understood both the game and what it represented. Other research has examined how Soulsborne games build resilience more broadly. A study from Uppsala University found that these games cater to basic psychological needs for self-efficacy and self-determination, and that the challenging difficulty, trial-and-error philosophy, and narrative elements are particularly impactful in fostering resilience and positive coping strategies. The mechanisms through which Dark Souls might be therapeutic align with several established therapeutic approaches. We've already discussed exposure therapy, how repeated exposure to failure in a safe environment can reduce fear and anxiety around failure. This is a real therapeutic technique used to treat phobias and anxiety disorders. There's also behavioral activation, a treatment for depression that involves scheduling and engaging in meaningful activities. Dark Souls provides concrete, achievable goals and rewards engagement with clear progress, combating the anhedonia and lack of motivation common in depression. The game supports cognitive restructuring, helping players reframe how they think about failure, challenge, and their own capabilities. Instead of, "I failed, therefore I'm inadequate," the game teaches, "I failed, therefore I learned something." This shift in thinking patterns is central to cognitive behavioral therapy. Mindfulness elements are present in the combat system. You have to be present, focused, aware of what's happening moment to moment. You can't dwell on past failures or worry too much about future challenges while actively fighting a boss. This forced presence in the moment is a core component of mindfulness-based therapies. The game also provides what psychologists call mastery and pleasure experiences, both important for mental health. Mastery experiences involve accomplishing something challenging, building competence and self-efficacy. Pleasure experiences involve enjoying activities, combating anhedonia. Dark Souls provides both. Beyond these formal therapeutic mechanisms, players describe more personal, individualized ways the game has helped them. Some describe it as a form of meditation, requiring such focus that their anxious thoughts quiet. Others use it as a test of their current mental state. If they're too anxious or distracted to play well, that's a signal to address their mental health more directly. One player described using Dark Souls as part of their depression recovery. They made a deal with themselves. If they could get out of bed and play for an hour, that was a success for the day. The game gave them a reason to engage with something, a concrete goal they could accomplish, and evidence that they were capable of achievement even during a depressive episode. Another player talked about how the game helped them process grief. After losing a family member, they felt numb and disconnected. Playing Dark Souls with its themes of death, loss, and persistence gave them a framework for engaging with their grief. The game acknowledged that death is real and devastating, but also showed that life continues, that meaning can be found even after loss. Multiple players have described Dark Souls as helping them through suicidal ideation. This might seem counterintuitive, given the game's dark themes and difficulty, but the explanations make sense. The game provides evidence that persistence pays off, that challenges can be overcome, that setbacks aren't permanent. It gives them a reason to continue, if only to see the game through to the end. And sometimes that's enough to get through a particularly dark period. The phrase, "Don't you dare go hollow," has taken on special significance in these contexts. It's both a reference to the game and a genuine expression of care and concern. When someone is struggling, hearing others say, "Don't you dare go hollow," is a way of saying, "Don't give up. Keep fighting. We want to see you make it through this." The game provides the language and framework for this support. However, it's crucial to note limitations and cautions. Dark Souls is not a substitute for professional mental health treatment. Players who have found it helpful often combine it with therapy, medication, or other interventions. The game can be a tool, a supplement, a source of metaphors and motivation, but it can't replace comprehensive mental health care. Additionally, the game won't be helpful for everyone. Some people find the difficulty more frustrating than rewarding. Some find the dark atmosphere depressing rather than validating. Some simply don't enjoy it, and that's fine. Therapeutic tools need to fit the individual. What works powerfully for one person might be unhelpful or even counterproductive for another. There's also the risk of avoidance. If someone uses Dark Souls or any game as a way to avoid addressing real-life problems rather than as a tool for building skills to address them, that's not healthy. Games can be an escape, and escape has its place, but it can't be a permanent solution to ongoing problems. That said, the research and testimonials suggest that for many people, Dark Souls has been genuinely helpful for mental health. The mechanisms are sound. The game builds real psychological skills, provides meaningful experiences, offers supportive community, and creates a framework for understanding struggle and persistence. What might be most powerful is how the game validates difficult emotions and experiences while simultaneously modeling adaptive responses. It doesn't pretend that struggle isn't real or that positive thinking alone solves problems. It acknowledges that the world can be hostile, that failure is common, that loss is real. But within that acknowledgement, it shows that agency, growth, and meaning are possible. This balance of validation and hope is psychologically important. People struggling with mental health issues often encounter two extremes: toxic positivity that dismisses their pain, or nihilistic resignation that offers no path forward. Dark Souls finds a middle way. Your pain is real, the struggle is genuine, and yet you can choose to continue. You can find meaning in the struggle itself. You can grow through challenge. You are not powerless. Studies on video games and mental health more broadly have found that games can be effective tools when integrated into therapeutic approaches. A 2023 study found that video games can have real impact in treating depression, anxiety, PTSD, addiction, and other mental health conditions when effectively incorporated into psychotherapy. The key word is incorporated. Games like Dark Souls work best as part of a broader approach to mental health, not as the sole intervention. They can motivate, teach skills, provide perspective, build resilience, offer community. But they should complement rather than replace professional help. That caveat aside, the potential is real and significant. Dark Souls demonstrates that games can be more than entertainment. They can be tools for psychological growth, sources of meaningful experience, and frameworks for understanding life's challenges. They can build genuine skills and resilience. They can connect people and create supportive communities. They can offer hope and meaning in dark times. The fact that a game known for its difficulty and darkness has become a source of light and strength for so many people is testament to the depth and thoughtfulness of its design. The developers created something that resonates on multiple levels. As a challenging game, as a rich story, as a philosophical meditation, and as a psychological tool. Whether they intended all these uses or not, they created something genuinely valuable. Something that has helped thousands of people through difficult times. Something that has taught important lessons about persistence, resilience, and finding meaning in struggle. That's remarkable, and it points toward exciting possibilities for how games can contribute to psychological well-being in the future. Conclusion: we've traveled far together through the psychological landscape of Dark Souls, examining it from multiple angles. How it reframes failure, how it metaphorizes depression through hollowing, how it embodies existentialist philosophy, how it builds resilience, how it balances isolation and community, how it uses environmental design to evoke emotional and psychological responses, and how all these elements combine to create something with genuine therapeutic potential. What emerges from this analysis is a picture of a game that works on multiple levels simultaneously. On the surface, It's a challenging action RPG with cryptic lore and punishing difficulty. But underneath, it's a sophisticated exploration of the human condition, a tool for building psychological resilience, a framework for understanding struggle and meaning, and a community space for people facing similar challenges. The genius of Dark Souls is that all these levels reinforce each other. The difficulty isn't just artificial challenge. It's necessary for the psychological and philosophical points the game makes. The dark atmosphere isn't just aesthetic. It creates the emotional context that makes the themes resonate. The cryptic storytelling isn't just mysterious. It invites active engagement and personal interpretation. The multiplayer systems aren't just novel. They create exactly the kind of community support that enhances the game's other effects. Everything serves multiple purposes, creating a remarkably coherent and impactful whole. This is what elevates Dark Souls beyond a merely good game into something with lasting cultural and personal significance. People don't just play Dark Souls. They experience it. They learn from it. They carry it with them. The psychological lessons of Dark Souls: failure is temporary, but giving up is permanent. Purpose protects against despair. Meaning must be created rather than found. Resilience is built through challenge, and connection can exist within solitude. These aren't just relevant to playing a video game. They're fundamental life lessons applicable to the full range of human experience. And perhaps that's the ultimate testament to Dark Souls' psychological depth. It uses the language and tools of video games to communicate universal human truths. It leverages interactive media's unique capacity to make you experience rather than just observe, to make you struggle rather than just watch others struggle, to make you create meaning rather than just consume a predetermined narrative. For those struggling with depression, anxiety, or existential questions, Dark Souls offers validation, tools, perspective, and community. It says, yes, the struggle is real. Yes, failure hurts. Yes, the world can be hostile and meaningless, and yet you are not powerless. You can learn, grow, persist, find or create meaning, connect with others who understand. The darkness is real, but so is your capacity to kindle light within it. This message resonates because it's honest. The game doesn't pretend struggle isn't real or that positive thinking alone solves problems. It meets people in dark places and says, I see you. This is hard, and you can get through it. Not easily, not quickly, but you can. And when you do, the victory will mean something precisely because it was difficult. Whether intentionally designed as therapy or not, Dark Souls has functioned therapeutically for thousands of people. It has taught resilience, provided community, offered frameworks for understanding difficult experiences, and given people concrete evidence of their own capability and growth. That's valuable. That's meaningful. That's worth celebrating. As we close, I want to leave you with this. Whether you're struggling with mental health challenges, existential questions, or just trying to beat a particular difficult boss, the core lesson remains the same. Don't you dare go hollow. Maintain your purpose, whatever that means for you. Engage with challenges rather than avoiding them. Learn from failures rather than being defined by them. Connect with others who understand your struggle. Create meaning through your choices and actions. Keep kindling the fire, metaphorical or literal, because that act of continued effort, that refusal to give up, is what preserves your humanity. Dark Souls is just a game, but it's also a teacher, a mirror, a companion, and for many, a genuine help through dark times. May we all take its lessons to heart. Persist, learn, find meaning in struggle, and never, ever go hollow. Thank you for watching. If you found this analysis valuable, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It helps us continue exploring the deeper meanings in the games we love. Until next time, praise the sun, and don't you dare go hollow. Part 8. The abyss within, confronting our shadow self, there's a location in Dark Souls that stands apart from all others, a place that seems to exist outside the normal geography of Lordran. It's called the Abyss, and reaching it requires a special covenant ring and a willingness to descend into literal darkness. Here, in this void beneath the ruins of New Londo, you face the Four Kings, rulers who were corrupted by the dark and now exist as fragments of their former selves, endlessly attacking anyone who enters their domain. The Abyss is more than just a boss arena. It's a psychological concept made physical, a manifestation of the darkest aspects of the human psyche. And understanding what the Abyss represents gives us deeper insight into Dark Souls' psychological sophistication. In Jungian psychology, there's a concept called the shadow self. This is the part of our psyche that contains everything we don't want to acknowledge about ourselves. Our fears, our anger, our capacity for cruelty, our shameful desires, all the aspects of ourselves that we repress or deny. Carl Jung argued that integrating the shadow, acknowledging and accepting these dark aspects rather than denying them, is essential for psychological wholeness and growth. The Abyss in Dark Souls functions as a literalization of this shadow. It's the darkness that exists within humanity itself, the dark soul that the pygmy found in the first flame and from which all humans descend. Throughout the game's lore, we see what happens when this darkness is denied or improperly confronted. Artorias, the Great Knight, traveled into the Abyss to confront Manus. As he faced overwhelming darkness, he made a final act of compassion. He gave his great shield to protect his companion Sif, raising a magical barrier around the young wolf. This sacrifice left his left arm broken and him defenseless, and he was subsequently corrupted by the Abyss, driven mad by the very darkness he sought to combat. This mirrors what happens psychologically when we try to simply destroy or suppress our shadow aspects rather than integrating them. We can't eliminate the darkness within ourselves. Attempting to do so either fails completely or warps us in the process. Artorias' fate is a warning. Confronting the darkness within is necessary, but approaching it with pure aggression and denial leads to corruption. The covenant of Artorias' ring that you acquire from Sif represents Artorias' legacy. According to item descriptions, Artorias made a covenant with creatures of the Abyss, likely the primordial serpents, though this isn't explicitly confirmed, that allowed him to traverse the Abyss without being immediately consumed. This ring carries that same protective power. Symbolically, you're carrying Artorias' wisdom, learned through his eventual failure, into your own confrontation with darkness. You're not trying to destroy the Abyss. You're entering it, engaging with it, but protected by understanding and preparation. When you fight the Four Kings in the Abyss, you're fighting in complete darkness. The void surrounds you. You can barely see the kings themselves, just their attacks emerging from the black. This creates a uniquely terrifying experience. You're confronting something you can't fully see or understand, something that exists in a space of pure darkness. Psychologically, this represents confronting aspects of ourselves that we've kept in the dark, that we've refused to look at directly. These shadow aspects attack us from the darkness of our unconscious mind, influencing our behavior in ways we don't recognize or understand. The only way to deal with them is to enter the darkness willingly, to face them directly despite fear. What's interesting is that the Four Kings aren't inherently evil in the game's lore. They were once trusted rulers of New Londo who served Gwyn faithfully and were granted fragments of a lord's soul for their foresight and leadership. New Londo was a prosperous city, a safe haven for the undead. But the Four Kings encountered Darkstalker Koth in the Abyss, and he taught them the art of life drain, a power that draws humanity from others. Embracing this dark art, they and their knights were corrupted, becoming the Dark Wraiths. The threat they posed became so great that the entire city of New Londo was flooded to contain them, sacrificing countless lives in the process. This tells a psychological story about how our shadow aspects develop. Often, they begin as legitimate parts of ourselves. Desires for power, recognition, safety, pleasure. These aren't inherently wrong. But when we pursue them without wisdom, without integration with our conscious values, when we let them operate in darkness rather than bringing them into the light of awareness, they can consume us. The life drain ability the four kings possess is particularly symbolic. It drains humanity from their victims, pulling the dark soul out of them. Psychologically, this represents how unintegrated shadow aspects can drain our humanity, our connection to ourselves and others. When we're controlled by unconscious drives, impulses we don't acknowledge or understand, we become less fully human, more fragmented and reactive. The cure, the game suggests, isn't to avoid the abyss entirely. You must go there. It's required for game progression. But you go prepared, protected, aware. You engage with the darkness directly but carefully. You face the shadow aspects represented by the four kings and overcome them not by denying they exist but by confronting them consciously. There's another abyss-related character worth examining. Knight Artorias' companion, the great wolf Sif. In the base game, you encounter Sif guarding Artorias' grave. The wolf attacks you because you're approaching the grave, trying to protect his fallen master's resting place and, more importantly, trying to prevent you from entering the abyss using Artorias' ring. Sif's loyalty is admirable, but it's also tragic. The wolf is trying to prevent others from suffering Artorias' fate, trying to keep them from the abyss. But this protection, this attempt to guard others from darkness, prevents necessary growth. You must defeat Sif to progress. You must move past this protective instinct and face the darkness anyway. This has psychological resonance. Often, our defense mechanisms, the psychological strategies we develop to protect ourselves from pain, end up limiting our growth. These defenses served a purpose once. They kept us safe. But continuing to rely on them prevents us from engaging with challenges we need to face for genuine development. Like Sif, our defenses are loyal and well-intentioned, but they must eventually be overcome. In the DLC content, there's an optional encounter where you can find a younger Sif trapped in the chasm of the abyss, surrounded by humanity sprites and about to be consumed. If you save Sif in this encounter, something remarkable happens. When you later meet the grown Sif at Artorias' grave in the present, the wolf recognizes your scent. Sif hesitates, whimpers, clearly doesn't want to fight you, but ultimately has no choice. The wolf is bound by loyalty and duty to protect the grave and prevent others from entering the abyss. This adds another layer. Sometimes the things we must overcome to grow are the very things that once saved us. The skills, beliefs, or relationships that protected us in one phase of life can become obstacles in another. Growth requires recognizing this and being willing to move forward anyway, honoring what helped us before while acknowledging it's time for something different. The abyss also connects to the game's central choice between linking the fire and embracing the dark. The darkness, we learn, isn't inherently evil. It's simply the natural state that follows the age of fire. Humanity itself is born from the dark soul found by the pygmy. Attempting to perpetually suppress or deny this darkness, as Gwyn did when he linked the fire the first time, is ultimately futile and possibly even wrong. This mirrors psychological insights about the shadow. Jung argued that the shadow isn't just our negative qualities. It also contains positive potentials that we've rejected or never developed because they didn't fit our conscious self-image. Integrating the shadow means accepting all of ourselves, not just the parts we're comfortable with. In Dark Souls, embracing the dark doesn't mean becoming evil. It might mean accepting humanity as it truly is, with all its complexity, rather than trying to force it into an artificial age of fire that can't last. The game doesn't tell you which choice is right, but it does suggest that fear of the dark, of our own shadow aspects, can lead to destructive cycles of denial and futile attempts at control. Manus, father of the abyss, who you encounter in the DLC, provides another angle on this theme. According to the lore, Manus was once human, possibly even the furtive pygmy who found the Dark Soul, though this remains a matter of interpretation among scholars of the game. His grave was disturbed. His body was awakened and tortured by the people of Owalasile at the urging of a primordial serpent. Most significantly, his precious broken pendant, an object of deep personal meaning, was taken from him. Driven by rage and an overwhelming sense of loss, Manus transformed into a monstrous embodiment of the abyss. The game suggests through item descriptions and NPC dialogue that he was driven by wrenching nostalgia, lost joy, and desperate longing to reclaim his pendant. This implies that the abyss he creates is, at least in part, an expression of wild, uncontrolled emotion born from unprocessed pain and loss. Psychologically, this is profound. Our shadow often forms around wounds, traumas, losses that we couldn't fully process. These experiences get buried in our unconscious, where they fester and grow in the dark. If triggered, they can emerge in destructive ways, spreading darkness around us, harming ourselves and others. Manus represents what happens when pain isn't acknowledged and processed, but instead buried, denied, left to grow in darkness. The cure isn't to ignore the pain or the shadow it creates. The cure is to face it, to descend into the abyss of our own unprocessed trauma and difficult emotions, to confront what we've been avoiding. This is terrifying, just as entering the literal abyss in Dark Souls is terrifying. But it's also necessary for healing and growth. When you defeat Manus, you can acquire his soul and, from it, create sorceries related to the abyss. This is symbolic of integration, taking the darkness, the shadow, the pain, and transforming it into something useful, something that enhances your capabilities. This is what shadow integration looks like psychologically. We don't destroy our darkness. We acknowledge it, understand it, and integrate it into our whole self, where it can become a source of strength rather than unconscious sabotage. The Darkwraith Covenant offers another perspective on the abyss. Darkwraiths serve Koth, the primordial serpent who represents acceptance of the dark. They invade other players' worlds and drain their humanity, collecting it for what they believe will be the coming age of dark. They've chosen to align themselves with darkness, to embrace humanity's shadow nature. The game doesn't present this as purely evil, just as it doesn't present Framp's path of linking the fire as purely good. These are different philosophies, different relationships with darkness and light. The Darkwraiths have chosen to stop fighting their shadow nature, to accept and even celebrate the darkness within humanity. Whether this is liberating or corrupting depends on perspective. This moral ambiguity reflects the complexity of shadow work in psychology. Simply accepting and acting on all our shadow impulses isn't healthy integration. That's just being controlled by unconscious drives. But denying the shadow entirely isn't healthy either. True integration requires conscious awareness, acceptance of the shadow's existence, and wise discrimination about when and how to express different aspects of ourselves. The abyss, in all its manifestations in Dark Souls, represents the challenge of confronting our deepest, darkest psychological material. It's necessary, terrifying, dangerous, and potentially transformative. The game shows us different responses to this challenge through different characters. Artorias' aggressive denial leading to corruption, Sif's protective avoidance, Manus' uncontrolled expression of pain, the Four Kings' consumption by desire for power, the Darkwraith's wholesale embrace of darkness. Your path through the abyss is your own to determine. But the game makes clear that this confrontation is unavoidable. The darkness exists. It's part of humanity. It's part of you. The question isn't whether to face it, but how. With awareness or denial, with fear or acceptance, seeking to destroy it or to understand and integrate it. This is perhaps Dark Soul's most sophisticated psychological insight, that genuine growth requires descending into our own personal abyss, confronting what we've kept in shadow, facing our fears and pain and denied aspects of self. It's the hero's journey, the dark night of the soul, the descensus ad inferos, descent into the underworld. It's ancient wisdom encoded in game mechanics and lore. And like the literal abyss in the game, this psychological descent is terrifying but necessary. We can't become whole while parts of ourselves remain in darkness, unacknowledged and unintegrated. We must take up the ring of understanding, descend into our depths, face what lurks there, and emerge transformed, carrying new power forged from shadow made conscious. Don't you dare go hollow, but also, don't you dare refuse the abyss. Both messages matter. Maintain your purpose, your humanity, your light, but also face your darkness. Integration, wholeness requires both. Part 9. The cycle of fire and dark, understanding patterns and breaking free. One of Dark Soul's most compelling and complex themes is the cycle itself, the eternal return of the Age of Fire and the Age of Dark. This isn't just background lore. It's a philosophical and psychological concept that resonates deeply with human experience. Understanding this cycle and what it means to either perpetuate or break it offers profound insights into patterns in our own lives. The lore tells us that the world began in a gray, formless state of ancient dragons and everlasting stone. Then came fire, bringing disparity. Heat and cold, life and death, light and dark. From the flames, beings arose who claimed the Lord's souls. Gwyn, the Lord of Sunlight, the Witch of Izalith, Nito, the first of the dead, and the furtive pygmy who found the Dark Soul source of humanity. These lords waged war against the dragons and won, establishing the Age of Fire. But ages don't last forever. The fire began to fade. Gwyn, desperate to preserve his age, did something unprecedented. He sacrificed himself, burning his own powerful soul as fuel to kindle the first flame, prolonging the Age of Fire. This act established the cycle. When the fire fades, a powerful soul must be burned to rekindle it. But this solution is temporary. The flame fades again. Another sacrifice is needed, and another. The cycle perpetuates, with each iteration seemingly weaker than the last. The Age of Fire growing more desperate, the world more broken. By the time you arrive in Lordran, centuries or millennia of this cycle have passed, and the world is in advanced decay. This concept of cyclical time, of eternal return, has deep roots in philosophy. Nietzsche explored it extensively, proposing eternal recurrence as both a cosmological possibility and a psychological test. The idea is that if you had to live your life exactly as you've lived it, over and over, infinitely, would you be filled with despair or joy? Could you embrace your existence with all its pain and struggle if you knew it would repeat eternally? Dark Souls asks a similar question, but on a civilizational and cosmic scale. The Age of Fire isn't perfect. It's full of suffering, undeath, hollowing, decay. But it's familiar, it's known. And so beings like Gwyn choose to perpetuate it rather than face the unknown of the Age of Dark. They choose the devil they know over the one they don't. Psychologically, this mirrors how we get trapped in cycles in our own lives. Unhealthy relationships, destructive behaviors, negative thought patterns. We often perpetuate these cycles even when they cause suffering because they're familiar. Change is terrifying. The unknown feels more dangerous than the painful familiar. So we keep kindling the same fires, making the same choices, hoping for different results while repeating the same patterns. The undead curse itself is part of this cycle. When the flame fades, the curse emerges, afflicting humans with undeath. They die but return, slowly losing their memories, their sense of self, their humanity until they hollow. This curse drives people to seek the flame, to ring the bells, to kindle it again, because that's the only way to temporarily end the curse. The curse creates the motivation to perpetuate the cycle. This is remarkably similar to how psychological patterns self-perpetuate. Our defense mechanisms, our coping strategies, often create the very problems they're meant to solve. We avoid intimacy because we fear rejection, which ensures we remain lonely, which reinforces our belief that we're unlovable. We work excessively to feel valuable, which prevents genuine relationships, which makes us feel empty, which makes us work more. The pattern creates its own motivation to continue. The choice the game gives you at the end, link the fire or walk away, is a choice about cycles. Linking the fire perpetuates the cycle. You sacrifice yourself to extend the age of fire a bit longer, but eventually it will fade again and someone else will face the same choice. Walking away allows the age of dark to begin, breaking the cycle, but what that means is uncertain and frightening. Neither choice is presented as clearly correct. The game doesn't tell you what happens if you let the dark age begin. It might be the natural state of things, humanity's true destiny, liberation from an artificial cycle. Or it might be worse than the age of fire, all the warnings about darkness possibly justified. The ambiguity is intentional and important. This reflects the real uncertainty of breaking psychological cycles. When you decide to stop a destructive pattern, you don't know what will replace it. The new unknown might be better or it might be worse. All you know is that the current pattern isn't working, isn't sustainable, is slowly killing you. But that knowledge alone doesn't make the leap into the unknown less frightening. What's particularly insightful is how the game shows the costs of perpetuating the cycle. Gwyn, once the mighty Lord of Sunlight, is found at the end of the game as a hollow shell of his former self, mindlessly guarding the first flame. His sacrifice didn't preserve his kingdom or his power. It just delayed the inevitable while consuming him entirely. The very act of trying to maintain the age of fire hollowed him out. This is what happens when we cling too desperately to what's familiar, when we sacrifice our vitality and growth trying to maintain conditions that are naturally changing. Gwyn represents the tragedy of refusing to let go, of trying to freeze time, of burning yourself up trying to keep things as they were.